Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Planning for your Microsoft Dynamics GP Year-End Payroll. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will be answering questions throughout the presentation, and we'll also follow up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have Tina Hare, who is a GP Senior Application Consultant, and Ernie Marinchin, who is a GP Senior Consultant here at Socius. So at this point, Tina, I believe we're ready to transition over to you.
Today we're going to walk through the process for GP payroll year-end. Ernie will jump in as necessary. Otherwise, you get to hear me. So, as Lindsay said, you can ask questions as we go through. So, we're going to start, and the most important thing right now is the payroll year-end updates have been released for GP 2013, GP 2015, and GP 2016. They were all released as of November 19th. There is no year-end update for any version prior to GP 2013. If you're on an older version, again, there'll be no update. So we'll have to, if you're on an older version, let us know and we can talk offline. And just so you know, if you are on GP 2013, you will need to be on the version 10.00.2104 or later, which if you installed the year-end update at the end of last year, you will be on that version. Same goes for GP 2015. To install the 2017 year-end update, you need to be on 14.00.0983 or later. Again, if you installed the year-end update last year for 2015, you will be on that version also. In regards to GP 2013, support for that will end in April of next year. You will no longer receive year-end updates or tax updates. So if you are on that version, please contact your CSM to discuss upgrading prior to the end of next year. And the tax updates for 2018 are typically released mid-December, right around Christmas. If you have not created your year-end wage file yet, do not install them. We'll cover that a little bit more as we go through, but I had somebody do that last year, but don't install them. You want to make sure that you're installing 2017 if you install any kind of tax updates before you create your year-end wage file. So the other thing to mention as we go through this, installation of the year-end update will be mandatory if you are doing magnetic media through GP or if you are doing Affordable Care Act through GP. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more also. But the 2017 year-end update, there are no W-2 or W-3 form changes. So those stay the same. Again, if W-2 changes, they are in there, they are required. And if you, again, are doing magnetic media, you will be required to install the year-end update for that. There are some product quality fixes around payroll in the year-end update. As I mentioned, there's also Affordable Care Act updates. There's form as well as code changes. And one of the other things that year-end update does is some additional updates outside of payroll or fixed assets. The luxury auto depreciation changes, so that's more for your accounting department. And just so you know, there are no payables form changes, so no 1099 changes in regards to coming through the year-end update. So the first thing you want to do is install your year-end update, or either if you're installing it, that's fine, or contact Socius about having us install it for you. It acts like a service pack. It can be installed at any time. You do not have to wait until after your last payroll is ran to install it. The earlier you get that installed, the better, especially if you're having associates do it. We install clients 50 or 60 a year, so if you want to get on our schedule to get that done, please contact your CSM as soon as possible if you already haven't. So once your year-end update's installed and you're ready to begin year-end, if you're going to print the statements before you run your 2018 pay runs, you just want to make sure that all pay runs are complete, that you've completed your month end, your period end, and your quarter end procedures. Then you want to make a backup of your database, label it pre-year end backup so that you have that in case you need to restore it back to that. Then you're ready to create your year-end wage file. You do want to make sure your user date is in the calendar year of 2017. Once you create your year-end wage file, Microsoft recommends that you make another backup of your 2017 company databases and label that post year-end wage file. Again, it just prevents you from having to do steps again if you need to restore. Then you want to work on verifying your W-2 and your 1099-R statement information. You can do that comparing your year-end wage report to your 941s that you've submitted throughout the year, as well as your state and local information. Then they recommend that you make another backup if you've made changes prior to or in the process of verifying. Then you're ready to print you can print your W-2 validation report, your W-2 statements, as well as your W-3 transmittal form. So that's it for that. And then continuing on with that, you'll also print your 1099-R validation report, the 1099-R forms, as well as the 1096 transmittal form. Then you can prepare and submit your W-2 information in the federal EFW2 format if required, so that's submitting it electronically. If you're using human resources, or even if you have it installed, I should say, you can also inactivate, or archive, I should say, inactivate employees. It is an optional process. It's not something that's required. You can set up your fiscal periods for 2018, as well as close the fiscal periods for payroll series for 2017, which is also optional. That's usually done by your accounting department. And then once you've validated your W-2 information and everything is good to go, only then can you install your 2018 payroll tax update tables. You don't want to install those until all the information is validated and you're ready to submit. If you install your 2018 payroll tax updates prior to validating the data, and by chance you remove your year-end wage file and recreate it, it will then use the 2018 payroll tax updates, which typically means it's using the 2018 Social Security max, which is typically higher than the prior year. So that can cause some issues if you recreate your year-end wage file with the 2018 payroll tax updates. So if by chance you need to wait to print your statements till after you run your first payroll in 2018, the process is pretty much the same. It's just the order in which you do things changes a little bit. So again, you're going to complete all your pay runs, do all your month-end, period, and quarter-end procedures, make your backup again, or make the 2017 company database backup for the pre-year-end wage file. Then when you create your year-end wage file, again, make sure your date is 2017. Make another backup and label it post-year-end, and start verifying your information again. Again, you can still archive your inactive employees using human resources. Again, counting will set up your fiscal years, that type of thing. And then you can install the payroll tax updates and then process your 2018 pay runs. Then after that, you can print your W-2s, W-3 transmittal, that type of thing, and create the magnetic media file. That can be all done after you actually need to run your first payroll in 2018. So it's just a matter of when you actually print them. Any questions so far?
We are good on questions.
So creating your year-end wage file is a relatively simple process. In GP, you're going to go to the HR payroll page, go to routines and year-end closing. It should come up with the most current year, which would be 2017, and you're going to click process. The length of time that it takes to create that file will depend on the number of employees you have. I've seen it take, 5 minutes. I've seen it take a minute. I've seen it take, up to 10. It just depends on the number of employees. Once you create the year-end wage file, then you can print and review the year-end wage report. So if you go back to HR payroll routines year-end wage report, you would select the year in the drop-down, so it'd be 2017. And typically you're going to print it for all employees, so it's going to be marked regular. And then you're going to click print at the top. You can print that to the screen and then go to paper, or you can just go straight to paper, whichever you prefer. The year-end wage report basically is 1 page per employee of all of their W-2 information, and then the last couple of pages, depending on number of local taxes and that type of thing that you might have, your last couple pages of the year-end wage report will be the totals of everything. So all federal taxes, all tax wages, Social Security, Medicare, that type of thing. So if you need to edit W-2s, you can edit them. Remember, if you do edit W-2s, it does not go backwards and update the employee. So you might want to consider removing your year-end wage file before making changes. But if you do need to edit the W-2s, you can do that by going to routines, edit W-2s. You would select the year, pull up the employee, and then make the necessary changes. As you're ready to print the W-2 forms, again, it's under routines, print W-2s, select the year. You can print for all employees, or you can print for just one, depending on what you're doing. You do have to have the company information completed, as well as the federal ID number or employee ID number at the bottom of the screen. To the right, where the red box is, you'll indicate what you're printing. So you can print a validation report, which we recommend you do. It'll tell you if there's anything wrong with any of your W-2s. Common returns on that report would be if your address exceeds 22 characters, I think is the limit, it will truncate your address, and it'll tell you that, and that's important to know for the magnetic media file. You can print a W-2 alignment form. You can print the W-2s. You can print the W-3 transmittal from here, as well as the 1095Cs and the 1094C transmittal form. Those, again, are the ACA forms. Excuse me. You can also publish if you're using employee self-service in GP 2015 or GP 2016. You can publish the W-2s to employee self-service, and you control when that happens by marking that box up at the top to the right of the year. When you're printing W-2s, you can also exclude employee self-service printed W-2s. So if your employees have printed their W-2s from employee self-service, when you print them, then you can exclude those. For those of you that use GP for 1099-R information, you can print and edit your 1099-Rs from GP also. So this is the edit window. And then this is your print window for the 1099-Rs. Again, the address information is required. You can print the validation report. as well as alignments, the actual form, and the transmittal form. Excuse me. So, if you are doing electronic filing and creating a magnetic media file, if you go to Routines, W-2 Electronic Filing, you'll get the electronic filing window. You would select the year, and all companies in your GP environment will be listed, even if they do not do payroll, in this window. So keep in mind, if you are on GP 2013 or higher, you own magnetic media. Even if you're not currently using it, I believe the requirement is if you have 250 or more W-2s, you're required to submit your W-2s to the government using magnetic media. So if you are not currently using this, you can contact us and we can walk you through how this process works. If you are doing electronic filing, again, installation of the year-end update is required because there are some changes to the electronic file. So you will be required to do this. Pardon me. If you are using magnetic media file, there's a product out on the Social Security Administration's website called AccuWage. It's used to validate your file layout. It's changed this year. If you've used it in the past, you'll notice some changes when you log in to the Social Security Administration site. You'll choose on the right to log in. You'll enter your account information, which you should have from submitting in the past. You'll click Reports and Wages to Social Security, and you'll choose AccuWage Online tab and click the link to the AccuWage Online, and then click W-2 Regulars to choose your file and start testing. So what this does is you upload the file, it validates it. If there's an issue with it, it tells you what the issue is. If you, as it says, if you've used it in the past, you have your login information. If you've never used it before, you will have to register with the Social Security Online to be able to submit your file electronically. So, W-2s and 1099s, the filing deadline for employee and employer is January 31st. That, of course, is to, they're trying to combat tax fraud. So if everything is submitted at the same time, they're hoping that's less inclined to happen. So again, W-2s and 1099s, employee and employer copies. The deadline is the 31st. Once you have created your year-end wage file, validated that information, everything is good to go, then you can install your tax updates. There is a way to automatically install those. However, you must be logged in as SA. So you might need somebody in accounting, somebody IT, depending on who has the SA credentials to log in. You can go in, use the automatic method to install the tax tables. It goes in, updates those, and it's good to go. So, next are a couple of add-on modules that work with payroll year-end, specifically W-2 or 1095s and 1094s, are Integrity Data and Greenshades. Greenshades payroll add-ons include, for the Dynamics Payroll Inspector, they have the benefits, ACA eligibility tracking. They do local tax rates, e-filing for the Affordable Care Act 1095 if you're using payroll only. The Greenshades Centers for 1099. So that you can use e-filing for ACA if you're using HR and track the Affordable Care Act using Greenshades. Greenshades online employee service portal. So they do have, Greenshades does have a portal. Employees can actually access their W-2s from that portal. Greenshades also has a tax center as well as a tax payroll service. And you can use that when you're filing your employer, state, and local tax filings. So there's some things that Greenshades ACA or Greenshades can do for you in regards to ACA. If you're looking for something else than what you're currently using to track the Affordable Care Act. So the Dynamics Payroll Inspector can track the eligibility and offer of coverage. So it's actually like a web-based software. And it can also track benefits enrollment module. So it tracks eligibility and offer of coverage for the benefits themselves. Data is loaded from GP Human Resources to the Payroll Inspector or the Benefits Enrollment module. And then the 1095s are distributed from there each year. And they can submit those or they can download those electronically. So again, data is uploaded from GP to the inspector or the benefits enrollment. The 1094s and the 1095s can be e-filed directly to the IRS via the tax center that you have from the payroll inspector. Integrity Data also has an ACA compliance solution. So it can assist with complete compliance and reporting. It can actually accept data from any payroll system or any ERP system. It doesn't have to be GP. There are no prerequisites, and it's a quick to deploy. They do offer webinars on their site, so if you want to look at that, it would be integrity-data.com/ACA. And theirs is actually in the cloud, so it's always up to date when the IRS is changing the rules on us on that. So if you're using GP to track your affordable care information, again, you will be required to install the year-end update because of the code and form changes that have come down this year. And again, you will need to install it before creating your year-end wage file. So some changes for the Affordable Care Act in regards to GP. So the planned start month is not required, so it's not being populated in GP. The all 12-month checkbox is not required for employees, so each month is being populated in GP instead of the 12-month box. The checkbox will be marked if the dependents are covered for all 12 months. And again, GP does not support the electronic filing of the 1095Cs or the 1094s, so you can use either Greenshades or Integrity Data for that. And if you want more information on how that works, just let us know, and we can work with you in Greenshades or Integrity Data to get that accomplished. And the same rules apply for uploading your 1095s electronically. It's $250, I do believe, for that as well. So there are some form changes for the Affordable Care Act, so that's one of the reasons why, again, that the year-end update has to be installed. There's changes to the instructions on the back, and there's some alignment changes. One of the things that Microsoft has been kind of challenged with is inactive employees, if you're using GP for Affordable Care Act tracking, are always included. And so they came up with a process that in box 2A, or in box 16, if you enter 2A on the employee, the HR employee benefit window, then, and it's in it, it's 2A is in all, is in there for all year, excuse me, then it won't print a 1095C for that employee. So if the employee was with you in 2016, they were not with you in 2017, their information is still in there, but as long as 2A is in there for all of 2017, they will not be included when you print your 1095s. And if you have multiple insurance plans based on health insurance setup on the HR side, so for health insurance plans, you want to make sure that you enter the information in box 14 and box 16 that's appropriate. And for any plan that is not ACA reportable, as long as you have none in box 14 and box 16, then those will not be included or printed on the 1095s. So the Affordable Care Act deadlines. January 31st is when it's due to the employee, same way with their W-2. If you are filing it via paper, the deadline is February 28th. If you are filing your ACA 1095s, 1094s to the IRS, e-file is due by April 2nd. So you have a little bit more time if you're doing e-filing, which it seems like it'd be the other way around, but whatever. So any questions yet?
Nope, there's no questions.
Okay. So just some quick tips for year end. If you're processing your first 2018 payroll prior to January, but after building your year end wage file, make sure you change your date to January, your pay date. And the same way, actually, if you're going backwards, so let's say you haven't printed your 941s and you're in 2018, you need to make sure you change your system date to 2017 so that your 941s will print for fourth quarter of 2017. If you follow the checklist, and that's one thing I didn't mention, but if you follow your checklist precisely, you shouldn't have any issues with your year-end process. And as long as you're cautious, take your time and make your backups, you'll be good. I don't know about Ernie, but I follow the checklist every year regardless of how many I do. I don't want to assume I did something just because I did it yesterday, and I don't want to get confused with doing more than one in a day either. So I always follow the checklist precisely. There is an attachment in the panel that you can download. It's a handout, and it's called the US 17 year-end.pdf. That will list all the steps in the checklist for the year-end closing process. So you can download that by just highlighting it, right-clicking. If you have issues downloading it, you will get an email after the webinar. You can respond to that email, and then they will send you out that PDF if by chance you're having issues. So a couple of tidbits. For those of you that are on GP 2015 R2 and you're using self-service, keep in mind your employees can print their own W-2s. That's probably one of the reasons that you're using it. And again, you get to control when the employees get their W-2s. So as you're generating them, validating them, you don't want to publish them until you have finalized them. So in the print W-2 window, you would hit that box again next to the year to publish the employee self-service, the W-2s to employee self-service. If anybody is on GP 2016 R2, you can actually print your W-2s with lines on the paper, so no longer need a pre-printed form. So in the print W-2 window on the form type, when you hit the drop down, if you see the screenshot on the right, you can still print to pre-printed forms, or you can select the last option and print one wide forms with box, and it'll print that for you. So that's one of the newest features, which is really kind of cool. So when you're preparing for 2018, you want to make sure that you install the 2018 tax tables to update for federal and state rates. It'll also update the Social Security and Medicare. Obviously, tax rates for Social Security and Medicare are staying the same. It's still 6.2% and 1.45%. The maximum is increasing for Social Security, and the amount escapes me off the top of my head. Ernie, do you know what that is? It's like 128.7 or something like that. No, 128.4. It was 128.7, and they decreased it to 128.4, if I'm not mistaken. If you have local tax rates, you want to make sure you update those percentages. If any of them change at the beginning of the next calendar year, the tax updates do not take into consideration local tax rates. You want to make sure you update your maximum deduction amount, so 401k, HSA, FSA, etc., to account for if any of those amounts have increased or decreased. And most of them are increasing, if I'm not mistaken. The other amount that you might need to update is your standard employment rates. You should be getting some kind of documentation on that, and you'll want to make sure that you update that.
A couple wrap-up slides here. We do have an additional user offer. You can get 10% off 2 Microsoft Dynamics ERP pool users, and then 15% off 3 or more if you do this before December 22nd. Just reach out to your CSM and they can help you take care of this. And then also, client care support plans. Here's kind of some bonuses on this. You can get what's covered, GP, Management Reporter, Maforma, Animal Software, Professional Advantage, E1, and Rockton. So these are some benefits that go along with their client care support plan. So any questions on this, reach out to your CSM and they can get you more information on this. And with that, we will wrap up for today. We will get your questions answered once again, but we'll give you guys time back in your day.